Hey everyone, how's it going? Josh Shepard, Principal Threat Hunter at RADICL, and welcome to the second episode of the Threat Hunter's Corner. Now, on this episode, we're going to be moving away from our host focus. Last episode we talked about hunting for different types of your system processes, so your services, your launch agents, and daemons, and we're going to move to our more network TTPs. So this time we're going to be talking about exfil and C2. What are some ways we could look into specific techniques that fall under those two categories? Now, the kicker here is, and we're going to add ourselves a little challenge, is we're going to be running these hunts with nothing but EDR data. Now, the reason I want to approach it this way is because if you're just starting out your threat hunt program, or maybe you're resource constrained as an organization, you may not be able to have a SIM where you could do large scale hunting across a wide swath of network data. Maybe you're constrained just to whatever EDR solution you happen to have in place. And now you may be thinking to yourself, okay, cool, we're going to be hunting for network related techniques with EDR data. How is that even possible? And really the big piece there is that even though we may not be capturing all the super cool network data like a firewall is going to be picking up, an EDR will typically at least collect things like DNS queries. It'll collect things like remote IP connections. So it'll give you a destination IP. It'll give you like a remote port. It'll give you a local port. And this type of behavior is enough at least to be able to pick up some interesting things to hunt for. So for example, right, if we're going to be considering like our layer 3 network type connections, let's try to think through how we could potentially pick up C2 type behavior with this, right? One of my favorite things to do looking into this is really, and again, taking a big understanding of the baseline in your environment, we're going to look for non-browser related processes reaching out to unusual IP space or non-baseline IP space, right? And so this unusual IP space could be unusual ASNs, it could be unusual geographic IPs. And the reason we're looking specifically at non-browser processes is a couplefold, right? So browser processes, they're talking to a bit of everything, right? Embedded ads, just a bunch of different network type connections going on there. When we're talking about our non-browser processes, if we have a solid baseline, or if we want to use this exercise to begin building out a baseline, it's relatively easy to filter out what are our talker processes, right? What are the processes that always are phoning home? If you've got like Creative Cloud from Adobe reaching out to Adobe-owned IP space, you could begin filtering out to pick out, hey, where are our outliers, right? Where is that process that exists maybe on one or two endpoints in your entire enterprise, and for whatever reason it's reaching out to Russian IP space, or it's reaching out to a DigitalOcean ASN, right? Things that are kind of unusual. And if it's unusual and it's reaching outside of your network, that could be indicative of something going wrong, right? And this could be both a threat actor, maybe it's a malicious binary that's doing command and control traffic. It can also be used to really just pick up unsafe applications in your environment. A bit of a kind of war story from one of our hunts. We ran this particular hunt where we're just looking for these non-browser processes reaching out to unusual IP space. And we ended up finding on one of our clients' environment, they had downloaded a screen capture tool. Now, this screen capture tool, while technically not malicious, had a huge privacy risk in the sense that anytime a screen capture was taken, it uploaded it to a cloud or cloud infrastructure that was hosted in Russia. And then to make matters worse, every one of these screen captures was actually globally searchable. It was basically a feature not a bug type misconfiguration in the cloud hosting platform there that allowed you to look up any image on a 7 to 8 character ID, so something very easy to brute force. Now, the client in question, they dealt with a lot of sensitive information. So the thought of an employee screen capturing stuff that got uploaded to a Russian cloud and was globally searchable was, of course, a huge concern. And now this is one of the big things where, a threat hunt project or a threat hunt program can prove value, right? You don't always have to catch the APT or the evildoer. You could catch the employee that's doing something silly, like in this case, downloading this unsafe Russian screen capture tool. Now, that's kind of what I would really recommend there. When we're talking about your network connections, non-browser, reaching out to unusual IP space. Another thing you could look for is if any internal device, right? If you're seeing external connections where the local port belongs to a well-known service. So one of those services that's under your 1024 or less, this could indicate a couple things, right? From a malicious perspective, if you have an internal host that's reaching out externally with a local port that's a well-known service, it could indicate a threat actor potentially spun up some type of service, HTTP server, SSH server, Telnet server, in order to have a reattack option, right? The other piece of this is it could mean that you have something in your IT infrastructure that is exposing a service to the internet that you may not be aware of. This is, again, huge value add, right? Because if you find something like this that's unexpected, you either are finding a threat actor or you're finding some sort of potentially unsafe misconfiguration, right? And this is, again, just showing the value of that threat hunting program. Moving from our IP space into our DNS space. So when we're looking at just domain names, right, you may be thinking, hey, like, what could we get with just a DNS query? There's actually a lot, right? And we're going to go above and beyond just looking for kind of unusual top-level domains, like look for your .tos, your .sus, your .infos, your .funds, all those kind of weird things. Instead, let's take it one step further, right? So when we're considering what we could do with just a straight DNS query, a couple things come to mind. Right. First of all, you could look for your high entropy domain names, right? And this is either whether it's built into your EDR solution or you could port the domains over and run an entropy calculation. You could do Shannon's entropy to calculate the relative randomness of that domain name. Now, this particular type of analytic could help you pick up interesting adversarial techniques, such as the use of a domain generation algorithm for command and control domains. And then again, just give you something to really dive into to try to pick up that malicious type activity. Another interesting thing with just kind of a DNS record is if you're at least capturing the type of DNS record that was queried, you begin running a hunt for TXT record lookups. Now, TXT records from a threat actor perspective can be used from a command and control perspective, right? Because if the threat actor owns a domain, they can add, a bunch of different text to that TXT record. And so when a potentially malicious process does a query to a domain name, pulls down that TXT record, they could then execute those commands. And so that's kind of another piece you could be looking for. So those are just a few examples, right? If you have at least IP, remote port, DNS name, and query response, a bunch of different threat hunts you could do. I hope this little conversation here has really opened up the apertures, right? So if you just have this type of data, you can now kind of start noodling on the different possibilities and the different threat hunts that you could run to keep your organization safe, as well as provide value in terms of finding potential misconfigurations. That's what we've got for this episode. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or gripes, leave them in the comments, shoot them over to the website. Always happy to have a conversation. If you have any ideas for the next series or a series down the road, let me know. And if not, we'll see y'all next week, and y'all stay safe out there. Bye.